Alright guys, today you're going to be doing the spring constant lab. The spring constant lab is designed so that you can understand how forces on a spring stretch the spring or elongate the spring, and how different springs have different tolerances for different amounts of force. This force tolerance that I'm speaking of is called the spring constant, which we use the symbol K to represent the spring constant. So we will be placing different amounts of weight onto the spring and looking at how the spring changes length, and then solving for the spring constant of each of the 3 springs that you're going to be given. Alright, so you'll notice on the front lab table there is a ring stand with 3 different springs attached to it. You'll also get a bag of masses that you can use to stretch the spring. Then what you want to do is attach the spring to the hook. Try not to stretch it over top of the rod unless it fits, like the long spring does. If you have a long spring, you do want to hang it over the edge of the table so that when you put the weights on, it stretches past the edge of the table. To do the lab, you want to first measure the initial length of the spring. This is just the coiled portion, and you'll measure this in centimeters and convert it to meters. Then you'll start placing masses on the spring and then measuring the length of the spring again. Again, you're measuring the length of the spring in centimeters and converting to meters. That will allow you to find a change in length of the spring. That is what you'll use for the change in X. So as you're doing the lab, you want to follow the instructions, obviously. And for constructing the table, you want to include the mass on the spring, convert that into newtons for the force on the spring, record your initial length of that spring, the final length of that spring for the mass that's on the spring, the change in length, which is the difference between final and initial, and then calculate spring constant using the formula at the top of your lab sheet. Once you have done this for 5 different masses, you do want to graph your results using Microsoft Excel. All of the work can go on one graph. You'll have 3 different lines, one for each spring. The slope of the line should represent your spring constant, so you should see that the slopes are different for each of the springs that you have. Then you guys can work on the analysis questions. I grabbed the wrong one here. Let's get rid of that. Answer the analysis questions. If you get this far, there's something that I do not want you to do. You're not really ready to do number 13, which asks you to calculate the potential energy stored in the spring. So we'll wait on that question because we haven't talked about potential energy stored in a spring. So we'll hold off on that one. Anyway, have fun with your springs. Good luck. Do a good job. And I'll see you tomorrow.